everybody, I'm Janine. I'm here with Marble, and this is part 2 in our series about teleportation.
If you haven't seen part 1, which was talking about carry teleportation, go watch that first because this stuff is going to make no sense. In this video, we'll be talking about push teleportation, which is the second main type that people use in troll levels.
We'll also talk about how to teleport the player, and also some faster ways to trigger teleportation, because tracks are kind of slow and bad.
Cool. Okay, the first thing we'll be covering with push teleportation is that it's really carry teleportation in disguise. So this power is being carried off a broken track by this cloud block. If we follow the rules that we established before, it's going to go over to the left side of the screen, it's going to select a scanning column, and because it's on the center of the cloud block, it's going to pick scanning column number x equals 2. It's going to go down until it hits something solid, which is this ground block. That selects a scanning row, and then it's going to go across the scanning row from where it teleported until it hits something solid. This stuff doesn't count as solid because cloud blocks. It's going to go over until it hits this. That's becomes your destination column. And your destination row is you start scanning downwards from the height it teleported from until you hit something solid. So this becomes your destination row, and that's your destination. So if I press go, the power is going to appear over here. Now it's important to note that with your destination row, that is also a pushing row. So this POW, it has a hitbox teleporting across its destination row, and anything that can be moved along that row will be moved, as you saw with this piranha plant here. If I do that again, you see the piranha plant has been pushed until it hits something solid, which is where it can't, and it can't go any further at that point. If I make the POW teleport somewhere different instead, so it's one higher now, a different piranha plant will be pushed.
Yay! And this is the confusing part, potentially, a little bit, because, we talk about imagining the POW moving over to the left, and then dropping, and then scanning left till it hits something solid, but during all that time, it doesn't actually do anything. The game kind of decides where the POW is going to end up, and then retroactively decides what it's going to interact with based on where it's ended up.
Yeah.
So it's the destination that matters rather than the journey here. From the destination, it traces back to where it started from, and then retroactively pushes everything that was in that row.
That sounds like a plot of a bad movie. But anyway.
Sure.
The interesting part here is not the fact that it pushes the piranha plant, because it's push teleporting. The fun thing is you can make the piranha plant end up in all different destinations. So by just putting a solid thing made out of ground blocks in the way, it will get teleported up until the ground block. However, if these aren't ground blocks and these are, say, P blocks, this could be P blocks or switch blocks, anything that's got a collision priority that's the same as a P block, it will just treat that as something that's not solid, so it will go to this solid thing instead. And I can prove that by just doing that. It's a different piranha at that time. However, if there are solid things in front of the P blocks, you would think that it would find these solid blocks first and the P blocks wouldn't matter at all. But it still sees the P blocks, and apparently those take priority.
There it goes, right through the wall.
Yep. So if there are the blocks of this collision priority, so that is...
Can you show it with red blocks as well? Yeah.
Yes. P block, red block, or blue block, obviously, if it's in blue state, or a snake block. So P blocks, red blocks, or snake blocks, if you have those past anything solid, it will decide to teleport to them instead. But if there's nothing solid in front, it will just go straight through until it hits another solid thing behind the P blocks.
Amazing.
That's kind of complex to talk about, so I'll show you one more time. If there's something solid with nothing, with no P blocks behind it, it will just go straight to the solid thing. If there's nothing solid, but then some P blocks, it will go through the P blocks And if there is solid thing, then P blocks, it will go to the P blocks.
There it is. And what happens if there's nothing at all?
And if there's nothing at all, I actually don't know. It will just go straight to the... There you go. It will do actually what you would expect. The power goes straight across here. There's nothing to obstruct the piranha getting moved that way as well, so it just gets pushed as far as the power goes.
There it is.
Okay, so we've discussed the effect of P/red blocks on the destination of the teleport when you're doing push teleporting. Now let's get on to launchers/cannons/munchers. They all do the same thing. So, if you have a launcher with nothing solid in front of it, it will... First of all, the power will teleport the launcher as well, because the launcher is something that can be moved and it's in the way, so I would have to put a block there so that launcher can't go any further than this. But, as you will see, the piranha plant goes exactly halfway between the launcher and where the power ends up. Kind of weird, isn't it? However, if there's something directly next to the launcher, piranha plant won't teleport at all.
This is the technique we used on the opening screen of completely normal platforming, except that instead of a launcher, we had a stack of 2 POWs because it looked nicer.
Yeah.
But it does the same thing.
It's worth noting that if you use a big launcher on a track, the destination of this launcher is column 2. So the place where you calculate that the thing's going to end up is halfway between column 2 and the power/launcher/muncher. So if you count column 2 there, it'll be halfway in between, so which is here. Last thing is that you can manually make a spike wall teleport. So, right, yeah. That will make the spike wall teleport.
There it goes.
It works with a big one.
And it teleports along the same row as the POW did. So, as a demonstration, in Buck's recent level, in which Carl's game was crashed, Buck used a very similar kind of push teleport using a launcher to push a bunch of spike balls. And so if you wanted to set off, 1,023 note blocks containing winged coins at the same time for some reason, this would be a very efficient way to do that.
Interesting use case. If you put a big launcher on a track, that gives you the most pushing power. That's exactly a screen tool, but it's always going to be the bottom screen of the level, because even though this launcher teleports from a broken track that's at this height, the ground blocks here don't count as solid for the launcher because it's on the track. So even if I did something like this, it wouldn't choose this as a scanning row. It always chooses the bottom row as its scanning row, because none of the blocks count as solid for a track launcher.
Exactly. And if you wanted it to use the other more complicated way of doing things to control where the launcher teleports, you just put it on a cloud block and it should do exactly the same thing. Yeah, and that being said, it's often, with launchers, it is often more useful to just have it on the track because they're very tall and you'd have to clear a lot of space for them to scan through. And that's often a huge pain in the butt. So having it on the track and just saying, you know what, it's just going to affect the bottom half of the screen is usually more convenient.
It is necessary to have it not be a thing on the track if you want to push something like a launcher or a POW or whatever, because track objects don't collide with those.
That's true.
This is Steve-O, by the way.
Yeah.
Hi, Steve-O.
Hi to Steve-O. Okay, let's move on to player teleportation now.
So, normal carry teleportation rules don't really apply to Mario. Mario's physics are calculated specially, as you might imagine. And instead of teleporting to x equals 2, you just get a lot of momentum in one direction.
And you don't get teleported at all.
You can see this at the beginning of Jankster's Paradise, where you step on the skull platform that teleports you into a little hole. Meet Brian. And this is why if you want to move the player with teleportation and have the player just appear in random places, you need to use push teleportation. Though this has a lot of its own uses as well. So
let's make a little pen for myself. A lot of the same rules apply. If there's just a solid block to my left, I'll get teleported as far as that. If there are P blocks to my left, or red blocks or stuff, I will get teleported through that and go to the next solid thing. However, if there's nothing past the P blocks, I just won't get teleported at all, I think. Oh, okay, I'll get teleported to the P block. That's a not very often seen use case. And if there's solid things in front of the P blocks, I will get teleported through the solid thing until I get to the P block.
And remember, this works through multiple layers of solid. So if you move the P blocks way left and then make a whole room to its right, with gaps and whatever in it, it doesn't matter, you will go through all of that and zap to the P block.
Okay, that's what happens with P/red blocks. The same rules apply with launchers and stuff. So if you remember, this is always going to teleport to column 2. So if you have a launcher, it's going to teleport halfway between column 2 and wherever I place this. If I do this, column 2 is here. I'm going to teleport to halfway between these two blocks where my cursor is now. As seen here.
So this is one of the limitations of push teleportation. That's actually going to be very important for player teleportation as well, is if something starts out right next to a wall, it will often not teleport. In order for the thing to teleport from being pushed, it needs at least some distance between a wall. And so if you look in Wagon World at the places that we use player teleportation, you'll notice that we always have the player sort of hanging in a little area, suspended in the air, you know, mid-fall or something, because if you were able to get to the edge of a wall, you would be able to avoid the teleportation.
Yeah. In the finale, in the Dawn of Jank room, you jump up here. There's a switch that gets activated when you're up in the 1 tile wide chute there. And then that blows open a scroll stop that's here, spawning in something that teleports you. But the point is the teleport happens when the player has reached the peak of their jump and then is falling, and they're somewhere roughly here. And that makes sure that there's nothing to the left and nothing to their right. So we'll always get a consistent teleport.
Yep. Cool. So the problem is, tracks are terrible, right? They're slow, and using a switch to trigger them is like, you'll have to wait for it to traverse the whole thing, especially if it's a non-winged launcher or something. So how do we speed up the triggering of this?
Cool. So one of the ways to do it is to make whatever's teleporting a thinks it's on track item, and I will demonstrate how to do that now.
I like calling it a detached track item.
Basically, the item thinks it's on a track, but it's not on a track.
Great.
So we're going to do this with a launcher. We're going to put it on a track. You're going to make it whatever height you want it, or make whatever modifications you want to your block. So if it was to be a platform that was going to teleport, you would want to size your platform to the right size at this stage, because you can't do it later. So you put it on a track, you replace it with a claw, you put a hammer bro in a claw, make it a sledge bro,
Perform the ritual.
play, then press pause, then undo 3 times. If you did it incorrectly, it's sometimes more than 3 times, but the gist is the same. After that, you can delete the claw, and you have an item that thinks it's on a track, as shown by the arrow that's still there. But the track that it calls home is no longer in the same place where it spawns in the world. So if you see that, it starts falling, and if I do that, it gets caught on another track.
Now, a couple things to note here. Notice how it disappears. If you multi-select it, it will come back. But as soon as you play and pause again, it will disappear. So don't worry, your thing wasn't deleted. It's just not shown. Just multi-select around it. It'll show up. The advantage of this is that you can place it wherever you want in the world, including not at the center of tracks. So in this case, we've placed it right on the broken track there. And it's a little confusing because the arrow points left, but that will actually travel right.
Yeah, they always go by default to the right if they're on a horizontal track, and upwards if they are on a vertical track.
And that is a much faster load.
It is.
This is pretty much exactly the setup that we use in the finale in the Jankland room.
If we were to put a scroll stop here, and it's 4 tiles past the scroll stop, meaning it won't load until the scroll stop's broken, you can break the scroll stop and it will load a few frames later and you'll have a much more instant teleport. So if I show you this and then load like over here, if you look how quickly the thing teleports after the wall blows open, it's like maybe half a second, maybe a bit less. So that's how you can trigger a teleport much quicker.
Yep.
There are even faster ways to do it with Thinksters and Claw things, but we're gonna cover those in a few minutes. So with Thinksters on track items, sometimes if you accidentally layer them on top of each other, so if I do that, that will A, corrupt the game, and B, it sometimes makes the second item disappear for a second, and to fix that you need to go to the subworld and then back to the other subworld that you came from, and then multi-select again, and it will appear, and all the stuff that are there will be visible to you again. Also, the track that you originally made your trackless item on, you cannot delete this. If you delete this, it will corrupt your game, and if you go back to course spot, it will delete the course that you were working on.
I've lost a lot of work to that.
Yes. Note about the other thing you said that would corrupt it. It was because you copied it, so like when you copy one of those things, you end up with one that isn't attached to a track anywhere, so that's corrupt. If you delete the track, it's also because there's no track it's connected to. So
yeah,
like it's corrupt if the item doesn't have like a track that it's like thinks it's connected to.
The main thing I'll iterate again, I'm going to say this again because it's very important. If you make a Thinksters on track item, this block, even though it's Thinksters on a track, it's not on a track, but it calls this track home. So in the game, some link somewhere is linking this block to this track. And if you delete this track, then the link's broken and the course will be considered corrupt. So go put these in a corner somewhere and don't delete them.
It's actually it can be attached to a track. I think it can also be attached to like a clown car or a pipe, but that's a whole other thing.
It needs to be attached to something for the game to not consider it corrupt. Also, last thing, if you press undo whilst one of these track that it considers home, if you press undo whilst one of these is on screen, as you saw this a second ago, the game will fix itself and it will snap back like that, and you'll need to make it again because that's just a normal block again. So the best way to get around this is just to put all of your home tracks in some corner of the level which you never go to, and put a little note there saying no undo. You'll see that in a few of our Wagon World levels.
Yep.
Let's move to the claw method of teleporting now.
Wonderful. So the claw method of teleportation is easier to set up and more instant when it loads. It's a bit of a newer tech, to us anyway. It is very, very useful for teleporting players and pushing things. It's a little simpler, actually.
I'll show again how to make this in a second, but when you have a Thinksters in Claw item, in this case we've used a winged POW, on frame 1 that the game loads, the POW will teleport back to the claw. Do that, and POW is still there, but you need to do the thing where you highlight over it. And anything in the pushing row, which is the row or rows in this case where the claw is, or the height where the POW would be when it teleports back to the claw. It's going to be a 1 tile wide row centered between these 2 rows here. Anything that's along those will get pushed as far right as it can go in this case. So if I go here, the player's going to get pushed over to the right. And this follows the same rules as teleportation with pushing objects. So if I have some P blocks over here, I will get teleported through the ground to the P blocks. Same stuff applies with the launchers. It'll teleport me halfway between the destination, which is the claw, and the launcher. So I'll go to here. So to make your detached claw item, first you want to place down the claw, then get your item. Generally this is going to be a POW or winged POW if you're teleporting objects or the player. Next, you get your hammer bro, make it into a sledge bro, play pause, then you undo until your original item appears behind the sledge bro. Delete the sledge bro, and then you can separate your detached item and the claw it was detached from. And when you press play, the two will be reunited on frame 1.
So when does this trigger? So it's probably not great to just load in a room and then you teleport, unless you're that one room that we made.
He actually did do that in a wrong level, where you come out of the door and I saw. But.
Absolutely. And it's much faster than any of the track ones, to the point where like you can't take damage, you can't collect items before the teleport happens. It's literally frame 1.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I'll show that now. Even if I spawn in a saw, the teleportation computation gets considered before the computation that Mario's in something that will kill him. So if I wait for my iframes to run out, then go through the door, I'll get teleported before the saw can damage me. So if you saw for like 1 or 2 frames, I was here, but the saw hadn't had time to damage me yet. I got teleported before that happened.
Yep. But how might I load this in? When does this trigger if I want this to not like be instant when I load the room?
So this will happen as soon as either the POW loads or the claw loads. So the POW will load in with normal spawning range, but claws have a bigger spawning range.
It's 10 tiles off screen.
Is that the nib is 10 tiles off screen, or like the closest edge is 10 tiles off screen?
The closest edge is 10 tiles off screen.
Got it.
Actually, let's just move the claw really, really far off screen. So that's not going to ever get loaded. As soon as we load this POW, it's going to teleport. The same would be true of the claw, but the POW is generally easier because it follows normal spawning rules.
Really depends on whether you want to teleport left or right.
Yeah.
If I have a scroll stop and then blow it open with a bomb, because that's 4 tiles off screen, it will get loaded the instant the scroll stop blows up, and it will teleport 1 frame later. If I do this, that's not a ground block, that's a bomb. If I do this and the bomb blows up, 1 frame after the scroll stop blows open, I'll get teleported.
Yep. And this is the primary method of teleportation that we use in completely normal platforming. You can kind of see why. It's much easier to load, it's much more instant, you can teleport to the left and to the right. It just has a number of advantages.
Yes. The way we primarily did it in that level is instead of blowing scroll stops open, we did it based on when the POW loads. So if you see, I walked far enough left, the POW loaded, and at that point it teleported me. I was going in the wrong direction, but I wanted to make it look like I went through the pipe. And in that case, I would need to swap the locations of the claw and the POW, because the POW teleporting to the right now, instead of to the left.
Yeah,
yes.
And it doesn't teleport vertically at all. It actually spawns at the height of the claw, so you can't use it for vertical teleporting.
Yes.
Right, okay. So for vertical teleporting, I think basically the only method that I know of is curve track to curve track.
Yeah. So it's not just player teleportation. You can do the same sorts of stuff that you do with normal push teleportation. However, it kills most things. But the player is coded differently, apparently. An interesting exception is that anything in a clown car is safe. So if I do this, the clown car and whatever is in it also survives. This opens up a whole different can of worms if you put a launcher in the clown car, because then you can have a clown car that gets dragged somewhere, and the launcher also gets dragged instantaneously, and this launcher has the same rules as push teleportation for a tracked launcher. So if I make the clown car teleport to over here using push teleportation, let's just check that works. It doesn't, because I need a wider area for it to teleport to. There you go, it'll go to there. It's just one way to trap it in afterwards. Oh, that's interesting. I can't do that. Anyway, even though the place where the power's pushing across is these two rows, or halfway in between them, the clown car, the launcher clown car, will push me as well.
Right.
And I can do the same tricks with E-blocks and ground blocks and stuff, and that'll work the same with me,
Got it.
I guess.
But what if you want to push a launcher with the claw POW? Because that is a thing you can do.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to make the POW not winged.
Right, because winged POWs don't have interaction with...
Yeah, but a not winged POW will have collision, which means it can push that launcher, but it also stops. So, Marble, if you move that launcher one tile up, it should move it, I think. Don't put ground there.
Oh, it needs to be falling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it can be on a semi-solid. Just check that. Yeah. So
Is
that
actually very
should
interesting.
also have pushing through wall rules on the launch.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's a more complicated and annoying way to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve-O.
There's lots of complex stuff you can do with this that we're not going to cover here because we don't fully understand it ourselves.
Experiment with it. Come up with your own setups.
Have fun.
And have fun. And
Yay.
everybody get your levels deleted by Nintendo.
Yay.
Woo.
Or just use emulator. Anyway, bye.